Undead Gods, The Return of the Great Dragon, written and read by Ren Bryant. I know I have no right to be here, but I have no place left to go. I have to trust that this is the right thing to do, the right place to be. I've tried everything and everyone I can think of, and at great cost to my soul. They're after me, hunting me. I can feel them when I dream. They're so close. Please, you have to help. Tell me again your theory, Mr. Darkin, Brian Darkin. Mr. Darkin. That's quite the name to go with your strange tale, no? I take a deep breath to compose myself. I know I rushed into this. Maybe it would have been okay if I showed up like this somewhere in the U.S., but here in Switzerland, you just can't burst through somebody's door and expect a warm reception. They're a skeptical bunch, especially of outsiders. I'm at the Swiss Society for Ancient Studies in Bern. I didn't want to come here. I hate putting my fate into the hands of others. But I have no choice if I'm to free myself of the terror that's coming for me. The Society is one of the foremost institutes of expertise in ancient Sumerian gods. They have to be able to help. In front of me is a dapper-looking Karl Ortlieb, the Society's administrator, a petite Swiss man who wears a three-piece suit and doesn't want me here. I knocked on the Society's doors until my knuckles were raw. At first, Karl tried to push me away. He told me to make an appointment, but I insisted. I pleaded. I played the pushy American, the one who wouldn't take no for an answer. From the reception he's given me so far, I can tell he also thinks I'm the crazy American too. He doesn't believe a word of what I've been telling him for the past 15 minutes. I suppose it doesn't help that I look like death warmed over wearing soiled pajamas. I wish I could say it was merely jet lag, but if that's all it was, I would only have bags under my sleepy eyes. Jet lag doesn't explain my ashen skin, my lethargic movement, or the paranoia. They're out there, waiting for me to enter the night side, to dream. I'm sorry, I'm trying to understand, Mr. Darkin, but it sounds so fantastical, Karl says, now twisting the graying curly hair on top of his head. He seems nervous with my presence. I suppose I would be too if someone showed up on my door looking half dead. Please tell me again, he says. Help me understand. There's a Christian man after you? Have you talked to the police? No Christian, a vampire, a group of vampires. The leader's name is Christian, I repeat for the 5th time. A Swiss man, just like yourself. The vampires are real and they're coming for me, hunting me. They need me to be one of them. I feel them closing in when I sleep, during what they call the night side. I know I don't have much time, please. Lives are at stake. Mine, yours. These beasts are predators, attacking the weak. We must stop them. Karl backs up and looks towards the exit. I cover my face with my hands. It's no use. He thinks I'm crazy. I knew this was a long shot. Maybe I shouldn't have come here. But I've tried universities, police, civic organizations, even governments. No one will give me the time of day. The doctors say I'm seeing things, that I'm hallucinating. No one believes my story. I let out a sigh and slump in the chair behind me. I guess I can add the Swiss Society for Ancient Studies to the list of non-believers. I don't know what I expected by coming here. I guess I thought this place could help. I figured they could tell me something I didn't know, Some way to break free and put an end to this madness. After all, it started here in Switzerland. And I pray to God this is where it ends. But I need to get through to Carl. I need to get his help. I'm not a madman, Mr. Ortlieb, I say with my head hanging low, my eyes following the patterns of the red Persian rug that brightens the society's atrium. I grab onto the chair's armrest and slowly pull myself up, looking Carl in his anxious eyes. I know the look he's given me. Too many people in positions of power, people I sought help from, they gave me that same look. Like I'm a homeless person on the corner you don't want to see. The one you wish away because it upsets your perfect utopia worldview. I decide to start over. I need to get Carl to understand the danger that's lurking outside his door. Please, I beg, holding my hands together. You must listen. I'm here because of Tiamat, the great dragon. I close my eyes. Just a blink, I think. Before me, an astral plane, an otherworldly realm, the place of consciousness, of souls, the night side, a flash of madness, the feeling that I'm being pulled, sucked through a straw, and then shaken. I'm being shaken. Mr. Darkin! Mr. Darkin! Carl is shaking my shoulder, waking me like a teacher awakens a student in class. My head jerks up, back to reality, unaware that I dozed off in the first place. Carl's face no longer looks nervous. Now he looks worried. He's back to twisting his curly hair. Did you say Tiamat, Mr. Darkin? The Mesopotamian goddess? I feel so out of it. My body's desperate for sleep. It's been through its own personal hell week, getting maybe an hour of sleep over the past few days. If I sleep, the attacks come. They will take me in the night side forever as one of them. Yes, Tiamat, I confess wearily. The great dragon is awakening. He comes to us in our dreams. Feast on us. I feel my eyelids wanting to close again, forcing me to close them. Darkness getting longer with each blink. Coffee, Carl. I need coffee. Then I can tell you about my encounter with this monstrous creature of the night side. These undead gods. I first made contact with one of these insidious devils when I was on a backpacking vacation throughout Europe. It was only 2 hours from here, actually, in Geneva. I was visiting the Martin Bodmer Foundation, one of the world's largest rare book libraries, a place that held the original manuscript for Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. The classic was written in Geneva in June 1816, when a group of friends from England tried to outdo each other with scarier ghost stories. As a librarian myself, seeing that manuscript was going to be one of the highlights of my vacation. When I was at the library, I met a man named Christian Cavalier. Such a charming man he was. A proper man, someone of distinction, who wore a fitted three-piece suit and carried himself like he came from old money. His face was quite distinguished as well, sculpted, with high cheekbones. Aristocratic, I guess you could say. And his hair, it was a lion's mane. Long, thick golden locks he pulled back in a sophisticated ponytail. And those eyes, it felt as if his gray eyes pierced my very soul when he looked at me. Christian and I were both hovering around the manuscript when we met. I found myself immediately attracted to him and hypnotized by his French accent. He was very eager to strike up a conversation with me, and he seemed to know everything there was about the Frankenstein manuscript, telling me how when it was written, there was no summer in Geneva. He said he had a handwritten note from Shelley, which said that not even one single leaf was on a tree, the weather was so extreme. I asked him how he had such a note in his possession, and he told me she sent it to him. I laughed, assuming it was a joke. During our conversation, I began to feel a bit nauseous and weak, like I had the flu, so I excused myself and went back to my hotel. Getting sick isn't unheard of while traveling, so I didn't think anything of it, but I should have. I was feeling fine up until that conversation. I hadn't eaten anything strange that day, no tartare or snails, only a croissant and espresso, so I couldn't have been sick from food. It was after spending time near Christian that my illness came out of nowhere. And the sweating. I was sweating so much it looked like I had crossed the Sahara Desert, even though it was a pleasant summer day, the sun covered by fat, puffy clouds. I went back to the hotel room to take a nap and see if that would make me feel better. Do you know the Sandman myth? Where the man sprinkles dust into eyes to put people to sleep and dream? Well, it was like that. My eyelids were lead weights. I could no longer keep them open. I was asleep as soon as I hit the pillow. And the dream. I'm not normally a big dreamer. At least, I don't remember my dreams. But the fevered illness gave me the most vivid of dreams. No, a nightmare. I was asleep but awake, able to control my actions in my dream. A lucid dream. I was in this hallucinatory but totally aware state. It was the most strange sensation. This is what the vampires call the night side. And Christian, he was in my dream, plus 7 others. They all wore hooded black robes. I was the 9th individual, naked, walking towards them. I found out later I was walking through the Gate of Mastery, a path that leads to the Grand Trapezoid. After having first passed through this Gate of Mastery, Christian held out his hand in fellowship, piercing my soul with his eyes, my hand in his. He said, "What is truth? The great dragon is the truth, the eternal truth. My being flows in the sinews of your body." More happened after that, but the dreams become a bit blurry with all that's happened since. All I know is that when I came to, my bed was soaked as if someone dumped a bucket of water on it. Though I was no longer nauseous, my heart was thumping in my chest. I was scared. The dream shook me. It felt so real and so frightening. I got up to splash water on my face and change out of my sticky, wet clothes. Then I called Jean Smith-Jones. She's my assistant and... No, assistant's not good enough. That doesn't give her enough credit. Yes, she works with me at Eastern Washington State University Library, but we're also friends. I wish it was more than that, but it's complicated. But Jean's a real sleuth. She loves digging into the past. I called Jean and I told her book me the first flight home. Milan could wait. And then I also asked her to see what she can find out about a man named Christian Cavalier. Jean was waiting for me at customs at the airport. I smiled when I saw her, a sea of calmness in the chaotic airport world buzzing around her. We hugged. It was a strong embrace, me squeezing harder than she did. Her hand pressed against my back and gave me a shiver. It felt so good to be home. She felt good. "You look like hell, Brian," she said, flashing her cute, playful smirk. I had missed that look. "I have seen the 7 roots of sinfulness," I said, channeling my best Dante. "It can be found in 3 airports, 3 flights, 2 passport controls, and 1 delayed plane. I may have also seen a partridge in a pear tree." Jean let out a laugh, a wholesome and true laugh from the belly. She batted away hair from her face and leaned down to grab one of my bags. Jean looked good, much better than my haggard off the plane look. She had gotten a trendy bob haircut while I was on vacation. When I left, there was a frazzled nest on top of her head. But this haircut, it framed her oval face, made her look more professional woman, less eccentric librarian. Don't ever let it go long again, I told her. Jean and I had a banter about us that kept things easy, even when times were tough. Though we were co-workers, well, technically I was her supervisor, I so wanted us to be a couple. I really fancied her, but I didn't want to jeopardize the friendship we had or get a reprimand from the university given I was on track for tenure. Plus, I wasn't sure she felt the same way. If I asked her out and she rejected me, things would be extremely weird at work. So being good friends with her was okay. Okay for now, anyways. I was there for her when she needed, and she was there for me, so that was good enough. On the ride home, Jean told me she searched ancestry records for a Christian Cavalier, but found nothing. She said she wasn't surprised, though, because some old European records are spotty or flat out wrong. She gave me an example she found in previous research, where this French guy intentionally misspelled his last name on his daughter's birth certificate. The man was a thief and also an adulterer, and this child was born out of wedlock. The daughter had no idea until after the father died that she misspelled her last name her entire life. She had no idea about her father's misdeeds. Months went by and life went back to normal. New students at the university kept me busy at the library, and my mind stayed occupied on my tenure. I was back in the daily grind and didn't think about Christian at all. To me, what happened in Geneva was just a case of traveler's illness. I got sick, had a weird dream, and then was better. That was that. But then, in November, it all changed. That's when I dreamt about Christian again. Unlike my first dream of Christian, where I felt like I was in control as I walked naked through the gate of mastery, this time I was awake, but not in control. I learned this was called dream sharing. It was Christian's dream I was in. I don't know how it was possible, but it's one of the secrets of the vampires. The dreamscape was unlike anything I could have imagined. The world was pitch black with streaks of neon lights, yellows and greens and reds that all raced around like cars. The only thing static was Christian, standing in front of 7 others, their black robes blending into the background. The only thing I could clearly see were their pale, ghostly faces. "The dragon speaks," Christian thundered. His booming voice gave me chills even in my dreamlike state. "I am the creator of dreams and the dream itself. Tiamat, Absu, I connect the worlds and awaken the night side, for I am the black flame." The group linked hands and their eyes became red, as if filling with blood. I felt myself getting weak again, like I did when I was in Geneva. Except this time, I was weakening in a dream. A dream! How? I woke with a start and a pool of sweat. My pajamas were soaked, as was my bed. Just like what happened before. I went to the bathroom to splash water on my face and change, trying to shake off the nightmare. Yet, I couldn't. And I couldn't get back to sleep either. I paced my apartment, trying to put the pieces together. Nothing made sense. Why was I dreaming about this man I barely met in Geneva? Who or what is the great dragon? And who were those other robed figures? And Tiamat, Absu. Those words seemed familiar. I couldn't understand why I went from not even remembering my dreams to these fantastical nightmares. And the words, Tiamat, Absu, they rung in my ears. Somehow I knew them. I racked my brain, but nothing came to me. I wanted to call Jean, but it was still the middle of the night. So instead, I made a pot of coffee and waited impatiently for 4 more hours until security opened the library at 7. I would go, do some research, then talked to Jean when she arrived. After some digging, I found out that Tiamat and Apsu were deities from an ancient Mesopotamian religion. They spoke of primordial chaos. That's why they seemed familiar. When I was doing my graduate studies way back when, I had to research Chaos Kampf. That's where I first read about Tiamat. Tiamat was symbolized as a dragon, Apsu was symbolized as fresh water, and Tiamat's lover. Was this the great dragon that Christians spoke of? I felt like I was in graduate school again, excited about researching something new. Except this time, it wasn't a teacher's assignment. This was personal. I had to find out what the hell was going on. My nose was deep in books when Jean arrived. I didn't even know she was there until she flipped the cover of the book I was reading. The Treasures of Darkness, A History of Mesopotamian Religion. Newspaper's too boring this morning, Brian? I blushed, busted. I should have paid attention to the time. Besides the Treasures of Darkness book, I also had 3 others on the table. 2 on ancient history and religion, and 1 on dream interpretation. I would have preferred Jean not to see me digging into this subject, but the cat was out of the bag. I offered up a meek response. Just something to help cure insomnia, I said, figuring it was better than crazy talk about a nightmare featuring a charming European man and a Sumerian deity. You know what else would help? Jean asked. Coffee. Come on, let's go grab a cup at the bungalow. Bring your books if you want. We've got an hour until the student arrives and I need my fix. Though I already had 3 cups and my foot was tapping like a madman under the table, I agreed. It would be a good place to talk to Jean. The bungalow was the coffee house just off campus, a short walk from the library. We grabbed our usual, black coffee for me and a hazelnut mocha for Jean, and we sat in a booth in the back. Jean reached across the table and gently touched my hand. It sent sparks throughout my whole body. Her touch was my kryptonite, making me melt. No matter how much I didn't want to tell her, when she playfully asked about the books I was reading, I told her everything about my dream. When I got to the part about Christian mentioning the name Tiamat, I swear I saw him. Christian! Walking by the front window of the bungalow. It had to be him. This part of Spokane was a college town, and no one dresses like he did. And even if somebody did, what are the chances of that person having long blonde hair and a ponytail? That's him! I yelled at Jean, who cranked her neck to follow my pointing finger. I jumped up and ran from the booth to the street outside, turning my head this way and that, looking like a lost tourist. There was no Christian. Not on the street, not left, not right, not anywhere. When I came back to the coffee shop, I could see Jean giving me a concerned look like I was going mad. I wasn't mad after all. It was Christian I saw outside the bungalow earlier. I saw him later at the Thirsty Moose, my preferred dive bar a few blocks off of campus. The Moose was your typical sticky floor place, filled with neon PBR and Budweiser signs, a pool table and sepia-toned posters of Eastern Washington's better days. I was at the bar sipping my second Coors Banquet when I saw him. Again, he dressed impeccably, totally out of place for the Thirsty Moose or anywhere else in Spokane. There was no doubt about it this time. It was Christian. He took a seat at a stool near the opposite end of the bar and ordered a scotch. I downed my Coors and decided to approach him. I had to find out why this man from Europe, whom I was dreaming about, was suddenly here in Spokane. Let me tell you this, if I had known what was to come, I would have stayed far, far away from this insidious devil. Christian and I exchanged some small talk at first, both expressing surprise at seeing each other. He said he was visiting the United States and had no idea I was there. What are the chances? He said. I didn't push, but let me tell you, if you're visiting the U.S. from another country, Spokane isn't on your list of places to see. There's zero reason to come here. Even if you wanted to see Washington, Spokane isn't the place you'd go. Christian said he was traveling with a group of friends and he'd love to introduce them to me. Introduce them to a real American, he said. Again, I should have said no thanks, but my curiosity was piqued. I had nothing else going on that night, so after downing one more beer, Christian took me back to where he was staying to meet his friends. I thought we'd be going to a hotel, something fancy like the historic Davenport Hotel, but instead, I was taken to a large Victorian-era home, something constructed in the Queen Anne-style architecture. It had to be one of the oldest homes in all of Spokane. I should have known Christian would be staying at a place like this. A man of his stature wouldn't stay in an ordinary hotel like a commoner. The house had a steeply pitched roof with a large front-facing dormer. The exterior timber wall cladding was stained a red wine color, while the bright white trim depicted various patterns. The wide front porch was anchored with decorative brackets that brought the entire ensemble together. I had driven past places like this before, but never had been inside, so I was quite excited as we approached the opulent house. The inside was just as immaculate as the outside. A dim crystal chandelier hung in the hallway. I saw a matching one, also dimmed in the parlor on the left side. The windows were covered with heavy curtains, making the house seem isolated from the outside. Flame-lit candles danced atop dark oak furniture while the walls were alive with flowered wallpaper, paintings, and tapestries. Stepping into the house was like stepping into a time machine. We walked into a large library in the back of the house. The dark oak I saw elsewhere continued throughout the library bookshelf walls, which housed hundreds of books. I couldn't have dreamed a better home library. The room captured the essence of the time period, complete with a roaring fireplace and flicking candelabras. It was there I first saw Christian's friends, a group of 7, all dressed smartly like Christian, sitting on 2 period couches opposite the fireplace. I squinted and couldn't believe it. They were the ones that were from my dream. "My brood, I'd like to introduce you to someone special," Christian said as he put his hands on my shoulder. "A real American." Brood? My head turned a little, like a dog questioning his owner. A strange term, but since he was a foreigner, I didn't ask. I just waved hello to his friends. "This is Brian," Christian said. "Where is Brian?" one of the men in the group said, triggering laughter from the others. "Brian is in the kitchen," said a woman in a black sleeveless dress with lace at the neckline and hems. I looked at Christian confused. I was clearly missing the joke. "Those are lines from the program many of us use to learn English," Christian told me. "See, Brian, you're famous and you didn't even know it." Christian offered me a seat on the couch and the wine started flowing. Good wine, too. Better wine than I could afford. The conversation was casual and easy. The brood, they were an engaging bunch. I found myself almost hypnotically attracted to them. They told me about their travels and interests, and they asked a lot of questions of me as well. It was unlike any conversation I've ever had in Spokane. We even got into discussing ancient manuscripts, of which they seemed to know a great deal and spoke with irregular specificity, just like Christian had done with the Frankenstein manuscript. I began to feel slightly woozy and weak, but chalked it up to too much wine. So I slowed down how much I drank, but I didn't leave. I felt compelled to stay. There was something attracting me to this group of strangers. Late into the night, the conversation turned philosophical. Again, I chalked it up to our drinking and my being with an intellectual group. They asked me whether I believed in the existence of time and space. I chuckled and I said, "Of course, who doesn't?" That was their opening. Christian took over the room, standing in front of the fireplace, asking, "What is truth?" It was just as it was in the dream, the one I shared with him. Scientists and prophets do not admit their lack of understanding of reality, he continued. I felt like he was Plato lecturing students in Athens. It will doom mankind. Humans have tricked themselves that there's such a thing as time and space, but this is illusionary. Humans are trapped by their own weakness and despair. There is an error of perception, and they are prisoners to their own blindness. My eyes were wide. I looked at Christian like a fawning puppy dog. I was captivated by his words, entranced by his voice, mesmerized in this candlelit Victorian library amongst a group of sophisticated Europeans. I didn't pay attention to the fact that Christian talked of humans as if they were something different. I didn't notice all eyes of the brood were on me as he talked. As Christian continued talking, a curious thing happened. I no longer felt weak or woozy. Instead, I felt full of life, better than I ever felt before, as if it wasn't alcohol in my system, but pure energy. Dreams are the gateway, Christian continued. It is the conscious control of dreams that provides us the connection to the source of power, the night side. Though time and space are illusionary, there exist two realms of existence, the day side and the night side, yin and yang, order and chaos. Most humans live in the day side realm. It's what you, Brian, would consider normal everyday life. Go to school, go to your job, go home to your loved ones, seek companionship, and generally seek the good. That is the day side. It is in the night side, in dreams, where we connect with the esoteric energy of all life, the life force that radiates from all living things. Brian, do you understand? I had no idea what Christian was talking about, but the mention of dreams made my inside strangely come alive. I was like a sunflower being greeted by the morning sun. When I looked around the room, the brood were staring at me with eager smiles. I could feel them. I don't know how, but I did. I felt their energy, I guess you could say. I didn't understand any of it. None of Christian's talk, why I was there, or the nonsense about there being no time or space. I pursed my lips, a question at the tip of my tongue. But before the words could exit, Christian said it was getting late and he called an abrupt end to the evening. He called a taxi for me to bring me home, and I bid farewell to him and his friends. The next day I woke with a headache and a question of what really happened. I've never encountered an evening like that. Something so rich, such an interesting conversation with a group of intellectuals. That sort of thing doesn't happen in Spokane. Even at library conferences or other events at the university, nothing I have taken part in has come close to an evening like that. Bizarre, yes, but it was stimulating. With my head throbbing, I didn't think much about the feeling that surged through my body the previous evening, about how good I felt when the brood gathered around me, when Christian talked about the night side. That feeling was repressed, taken over by a hangover haze. When I got to work, I slumped at my desk and rubbed my temples, thankful I worked somewhere quiet. Jean arrived, and when she saw the state I was in, she wouldn't stop pestering me until I spilled the beans on what sort of party she missed. If I didn't tell her, she threatened to wheel around the squeaky book cart, circling my desk until my brain exploded or madness set in. We went to the bungalow again, where I told her what I could remember, the ornate house, the group of sophisticated Europeans. I didn't remember much of what Christian said, but I did remember the silly talk about there being no time or space. Jean put down her mocha and let out a snorting laugh when I mentioned this. These people sound like crackpots. What are they, flat earthers too? Do they think birds are not real either? I told her regardless of how silly it seemed, the evening was unlike any I've ever experienced. I said it was titillating. Titillating? She parroted, giving me a playful glance and that seductive smirk of hers. Really? Titillating? You've been titillated in Spokane? I shrugged. Regardless of how my head feels now, I said, it was an enjoyable experience. Most curious, too. I would do it again. Jean touched my hand, and like Chris Matthews watching an Obama speech, I felt the thrill up my leg. I wanted to take her hand in mine, but I resisted acting on impulse, fearful she would recoil if I did. But her touch felt so good. Don't let them drag you into this nonsense, Jean said, looking at me concerned. These guys may be after you. Remember, you were having nightmares about this Christian guy. He may be some sort of con man or thief. You never know. Why would he be here in Spokane, of all places? Just be careful, Brian. Keep your head about you. That's all I'm saying. And don't start telling me there's no time or space or I'll report you to the school counselors. Oh, why didn't I listen to Jean? Why didn't I heed her warning? She was looking out for me, trying to steer me to what's best without controlling me. But I ignored her friendly advice. Now, my life is in the gravest danger. Now they're after me, hunting me, wanting me for their brood. To complete them, they need me. You see, the next night, I bumped into Christian again. And again he took me back to the house. Same as before, wine flowing. My brain said no, but I couldn't help myself. It was like settling into your usual chair, the one that envelops you and makes you feel relaxed. I found myself very comfortable around the brood. They seemed like old friends, even though I only met them once. Our conversation again turned towards the philosophical and mystical. There was talk by Christian of self-mastery and breaking through the vessel of the body and using the night side in a waking state, living in the endless darkness of Tiamat. Becoming an adversary, Christian called it, a gateway for the forces of the shadow. Again, he was our teacher. We were his students, listening, soaking in the energy of his words. And once more, I had no idea what he was talking about, but Christian's words sunk deep within me, settling into my bones, penetrating me and giving me the nourishment I didn't know I needed. I felt good as I listened and absorbed his teaching. I felt strong, and dare I say, accepted, even though I wasn't on this group's intellectual level. And then Christian turned to me. He looked at me with those incandescent eyes, the ones that went straight to your soul. He said, Brian, there's so much more for you. More than fireside chats in an old house in Spokane. There's a world out there like no other. You've walked with us through the gate of mastery. Now it's time to live the life you were destined for. Here in Spokane, there's nothing for you. But come with us, and you could study from the most ancient of manuscripts, the originals, learn more than you ever thought possible. The Epic of Gilgamesh, the Lament of Ur, the Testament of Solomon. It all awaits. You are one of us, a part of the brood. Come back with us to Geneva. Be with us. Without any thought, my lips immediately said yes. It was as if I couldn't control what came out of my mouth. Why did I say yes? Such a fool I was. It was as if when Christian spoke, before me I saw immortality. I saw the spiritual entities Ba and Ka flowing within me. I saw myself walking a path together with the brood, the sensation of power and freedom coursing through me, the energy of the night side, self-evolution. I didn't know what it was at the time, only that yes was the answer I must provide. Yes to Geneva, yes to the brood, yes to all of it. I do not doubt I was under some form of psychosis induced by Christian or the brood. If I was of a stable and sound mind, I wouldn't have been associating with the group. I would have listened to Jean, who told me to stay far, far away from these dangerous people. I met them again last night. I told Jean as we indexed the new collection in the university library. She put down the book in her hand and looked at me with a worried brow. Who? Them? Those Europeans? I nodded. So we're going to be falling off the edge of the world soon? It's flat, you know. And gravity doesn't exist either, Jean sarcastically quipped. They want me to go to Geneva with them, I said sheepishly, not looking in her direction but at the book I was putting on the shelf. I said yes. I didn't want to look at her. I couldn't. I knew Jean would protest and I didn't want to get into it with her, but I felt compelled to go. My body pushed me to go. It was madness from a rational perspective. I had my career. I was close to tenure. I had Jean. Well, I had Jean as a friend anyways. Maybe if it was more than that, who knows? Maybe that would have been enough to keep me in Spokane, but I couldn't resist when Christian asked. There was something different about being with the brood. I couldn't explain it even if I tried. Jean and I got into it. Started raising our voices enough that the others in the library looked at us. She said these people were crazy and I was throwing my life away. She said I was like a druggie, like an addict who needed the next fix. That I was spellbound by these stupid, fake intellectual Europeans. She said I was being stupid too. She said she thought I was smarter than this and she was disappointed in me. That one stung. I valued Jean's opinion of me. Hearing those words made me realize that we would only ever be friends, now maybe distant friends. I tried to explain how much this group was promising me, how much I could advance myself with access to manuscripts I could never have dreamed of studying in this place. But it was no use. Jean didn't understand. She couldn't understand, I guess. She couldn't understand how it felt to be with the brood, the feeling of your body filling with energy. And then I dropped the bomb on her. I told her I was leaving tomorrow. Just like that, huh? She said, holding back tears. Just like that, I said, my eyes also getting wet. We finished putting away the collection of books in silence. Those were the last words I spoke to her, at least until I got that email from her a few days ago. In Geneva, things progressed quickly. There were the manuscripts that Christian promised I could study and more. I stayed with the brood. They all lived together in an immaculate chateau from the mid-1800s, located just outside city limits. The manor was surrounded by vineyards on 3 sides and Lake Geneva on the 4th. Inside it was like time stood still. Everything seemed antique from the time the house was constructed. Each night it went as it did in Spokane. They sat around a fireplace, held discussions that were 3 levels over my head, and listened to Christian. It all felt so good, so welcoming. While I was in a foreign country, I was as comfortable as ever. Perhaps even more comfortable than I was living in Spokane. I felt more electric, more alive. Christian would speak, trying to teach me things like making a connection with the night side, sealing, extending, and seizing the astral, the use of reason, and the 4-dimensional model of all possible worlds. I didn't understand what he was saying, but I could feel the power in his words. Christian gave me a very old book to help me understand, a relic called the 9 Laws of Magic. The pages were brittle and worn. He wouldn't say when the book was from, only that it was a manuscript of sorts. But inside its pages, he said, you'll find the true nature of the world. Inside its pages is the apocalypse of the self. Master it and the world awakens, he said. The day side becomes the night side. You become who you are. He said, when the time is right, the grand trapezoid will appear to me, and we'll enter it together to form the completed order of the 9, the brood. It is then that the grand dragon will rise once more, he said, to create a new world from the chaos of humanity. The dreams came back immediately when I touched down in Geneva too. Most every night I dreamt of the brood. I would be lucid, aware, and able to control myself in my dreams, feeling intoxicated. And as before, there would be times of dream sharing when I would be in Christian's dream along with the rest of the brood, in an astral world with streaking lights as Christian spoke about Tiamat and Apsu. And the energy of his words rejuvenated us. Tiamat, Apsu. I remembered I never finished my research on these ancient Sumerian deities. I had started in Spokane, but then, well, everything happened. I thought finding out more about these gods would help me understand what Christian was talking about. I dug into the manuscripts he gave me, but they were of little help. That is, until I got deep into the 9 Laws of Magic. Within its pages, it talked of a great cycle of life and referenced something called the Shurpu Kishpu, an oral book of dreaming that contained the truth of a great vampire dragon, Hakel Tiamat. Tiamat, there was the word. But there was another word that stuck out even bolder. Vampire. My God, vampire. I read and read some more. The 9 Laws of Magic talked about a great vampire family feeding in the night side, controlling the dreams. All of it. Everything I had been experiencing was in there. It also talked about breaking the 7th seal when the order of the 9 is complete and the ascension of the great dragon. Something clicked in me. A light switch flipped. Vampires. Was it possible? No, it couldn't have been. That was fantasy. But yet, still, I thought back to when I first met Christian and the way I felt. I thought of when I first met the brood and my feelings then, and the energy that I felt, the way they looked at me. I thought about why is this group of randoms from Geneva, a group who calls themselves the Brood, why would they come to Eastern Washington? This was no coincidence. The feeling of fullness I got listening to Christian, the dreams, it all started making sense now. All of it. I felt my knees get weak and wobbly. I was lightheaded and faint. I thought of Jean, her warning to me, telling me to stay away, telling me she thought I was smarter than this. Dear Jean, how I missed her. I was so stupid for not following her advice. She was looking out for me, as a good friend should, as a partner should. I missed her, and I needed her guidance and counsel. I was in too deep. I was completely isolated too. It dawned on me, I was never alone. Sleeping or researching within the confines of the chateau, sure, but not otherwise. I never thought of it before. In fact, I didn't mind since I didn't speak French, and having somebody with me to navigate a foreign country was very welcomed, but now it dawned on me. Was it mere friendliness? Or could I not be alone? Could I not be trusted to be alone? Would I discover something? Why was the brood always with me? The next day, when we were out in the city, I knew I had to do something. I was still with 2 members of the brood, but out in public was my only chance to escape, to find help. In the chateau, I was their captive, but in public, I had a fighting chance. We were eating at a restaurant in the Paquis area of Geneva when I did it. I excused myself to use the bathroom. As I left, I felt the eyes of the brood following me all the way until I entered the men's room. After some deep breaths, I cracked the door slightly to see if they were still watching. They weren't. I snuck out as quietly as I could and headed to the internet cafe across the street. I had to act fast. The chateau didn't have an internet connection, so I've been totally cut off the world since I arrived in Geneva. When I went online, I first did a search for Tiamat. I guess it was because my IP was in Switzerland, but one of the first results I got was about a Swiss Society for Ancient Studies, a collection of academics that were some of the world's foremost expert in ancient gods and deities. I scribbled down their address. Then I checked my email. I had thousands of emails, and I didn't have time to look or read at any of them, except for one I saw from Jean. I opened it and saw it was long. I didn't have time to read it all, but the first sentence said she missed me. My heart sank. I wanted to read more, but I had to go. I had to get back to the restaurant before the brood got suspicious. That night, I had the most awful of dreams. Well, I should say it was Christian's dream. We were dream sharing again. The domain of these vampires. This time, the dream wasn't the usual streaking lights and listening to him talk and being filled with the most wonderful energy. This time, when I entered the dream, I was naked and passed through the gate of mastery, the thing I read about in the 9 laws of magic, the thing I passed through when I first visited Geneva, when I first made contact with Christian. I felt myself walking through the gate and I couldn't control myself. I was compelled to go forward towards a shape, a quadrilateral with one pair of parallel sides and ghostly phantasms, life force from the day side that flowed around us. A shape made of intertwined flesh and bones, naked bodies of the brood locked together as steps for me to ascend with Christian. It was the grand trapezoid, its 4 points human rumps, infernal geometry. With an outstretched hand awaiting mine, Christian spoke. "This is the temple of the great dragon. This is the end to your mortal life, your physical death, the cycle of life, the final harvest, the apocalypse of your day side. From here on, eternal night side, and the completion of the Order of the 9. The awakening of the great dragon Tiamat on earth. We can never die when we live in non-existence." Christian motioned me forward with both hands towards him to join him and ascend into the great trapezoid. "Come, Brian, and remove the bitter taste of death from your mouth." My feet moved slowly towards him, but I didn't reach out for him. I was in control. Back in control of my body, in control in the dream. I stopped my body, stopped moving towards Christian, stopped all movement. I stood in my nakedness as the phantasm swirled around me. Christian looked impatient. "You will submit to the great dragon," he thundered. "No!" I shouted. And then I woke up. Sweaty and groggy and not feeling full of energy like I usually did after I was with Christian, but completely drained, unfulfilled. I looked around my room. I was in the chateau, in my bed, alone. I was out of the nightmare and back to reality. Though I was groggy and covered in sweat, I knew I had to leave. The brood, Christian, They were all in the chateau, in the rooms next to mine. I had to escape before they came for me, for I did something they never expected. I denied the completion of their brood, their Order of the Nine, and the rise of the great dragon. I didn't know what it all meant, but I was convinced it was vampires at this point. It was a cult of some sort, something mystical that I should have never gotten involved with. Jean was right all this time. I needed to escape, and fast. Without bothering to change out of my pajamas, I rushed out of the room, quietly stepping down the stairs and out the front door, not looking back for fear they would be there. I rushed into the darkness of the vineyards surrounding the manor, running with all my might until I got to the main road 300 meters away. There I stopped and caught my breath, feeling safer as cars drove past me, safer in a public space, away from the confines of the chateau and the watchful eye of the brood. I hopped across the street and waited behind an oak tree, keeping an eye on the chateau, checking if they were coming for me. After 10 minutes of watching, there was no movement in the chateau, no one outside looking for me, not even a light turned on inside. It seems I escaped without them noticing. I ran to the police station and told them my tale of these people after me. The police asked if I had anything to drink, consumed any drugs. The conversation went nowhere. They didn't believe there was a group of rich vampires in Geneva. I went to the emergency room, telling them I felt I was being attacked, felt the life draining out of me, and they needed to help. The doctors asked me about drugs the same as the police did. And when I heard them on the phone calling an ambulance to take me for a psychiatric evaluation, I snuck out of the place. When daylight came, I went to the University of Geneva, hoping to find someone that could help, maybe somebody in the history department. I patrolled the campus, trying to find my way around, but I noticed security was following me, the strange man wandering around in his pajamas. I needed help. I knew that, but I was a foreigner in this place, a scared and disheveled man in pajamas talking crazy talk about being hunted, about vampires. Then I remembered about the Swiss Society for Ancient Studies. Maybe they could help. Maybe they would believe a tale about Tiamat, the great dragon, and Apsu and a new awakening. I had no one else to turn to. At the university, I ducked into the library and found a free access computer. There I looked up the address of the Swiss Society. The address I wrote down before was back at the chateau. I also checked my email and read Jean's entire message. It made me cry. In the email, she confessed her love for me and how hurt she was that I had left. She said she hoped I had feelings for her. She thought I did, and she saw us being together. She talked about how much it hurt to have me leave like I did for Geneva, how I wasn't acting like the person she knew. She wished me the best and signed off again, professing regret at letting someone she had feelings for get away. What a fool I was. I had it all, yet it wasn't enough. Why did I go with Christian? Looking at the situation I was in now, I was alone in a foreign country. I didn't speak the language. No one believed a word I said. I decided to email Jean. I told her all that had happened, what a mistake it was, and how I believed the people were vampires, and I was in danger, and I was going to the Swiss Society, hoping they could help me, hoping they could stop the great vampire dragon Tiamat. I said I didn't know if I'd be able to contact her again, but I loved her, and I'm sorry I ruined what we could have had, what we should have had. I pressed send before the campus security could kick me out and then headed outside, trying to figure out which direction was Bern and how I could easily get there. I walked through Geneva until someone took pity on me and told me the general direction I needed to go. I was told to take a train, that it would be easiest. I could only nod and thank them. Yes, the train would be easiest, but I had no money for a ticket, nor anything to wear other than sweaty pajamas. The best I could do was hitchhike, and even then, if I did, I'm sure I would have been found by the brood. I knew they would be looking for me. They would be patrolling the roads, sweeping the area. If they were the type to come all the way to Spokane for me, they wouldn't let me go, not when they were so close to achieving their goal. So I began walking. I kept to the back roads and walked until my legs gave out. Luckily, the towns in Switzerland all have public fountains, so water wasn't an issue. But food was. I found a park bench out of public view, rummaged through the trash for something edible, and then collapsed and fell asleep. I was back with the brood. Back with the brood. They were waiting for me after all, waiting for me to sleep, waiting for me to dream. I felt them pulling at me, sucking out my life force, pulling my soul towards Christian, trying to force me to join them, to join their infernal geometry, to make the brood complete and unleash Tiamat. From the dreamy shadows came a thundering roar, Christian's voice booming from every direction. You cannot escape what you are. You have no choice. Day side, night side. We are always there, always hunting. The great dragon will be awakened. The order of the nine will be completed. I can feel the very essence of me coming out, myself coming undone, my soul being sucked by these vampires, draining me as I backpedaled. Yes, backpedaled. I realized I was lucid enough that I could control my movements. I wasn't walking towards them. I was backpedaling. I was still in control. Control enough that I could awake. I jerked my head off the park bench, my eyes opening in alarm, drool dripping out of my mouth. I was awake and alive, drained, sweaty, discombobulated, and feeling like I had gone 12 rounds. But I was alive. And that was the last time I slept. I couldn't risk it. Sleep dreams, that was their night side, their domain, the domain of the vampires. They fed in the day side too, but as far as I can figure, they had to be close to a person. Like when I had first met Christian looking at the Frankenstein manuscript, or when I was in the house with the brood. It was only being close that they could feed during the day side. So you see, Mr. Ortlieb, that is why I've come to the Swiss Society. I've walked a very, very long time and I can barely stand. I haven't slept. I'm near exhaustion and quite possibly hysteria. But I need your help. No one else has helped me. I'm hoping you or the Society has something about Tiamat. Some knowledge that could stop these parasites. There has to be something. Carl stood there, curling his hair, looking tense, his lips pursed as if he wanted to say something, but not quite sure what to say. Finally, after a long pause, Carl says, Mr. Darkin, I believe we do have someone in residence here at the Society that can help you. A Mr. El-Abweeb, who is a visiting scholar. He has written many books about ancient Babylonians, and he may be able to help you with information on Tiamat. Please, let me take you to him. I fell back in my seat and ran my hands through my hair. Finally, someone that didn't kick me out or say I was crazy or worse. Finally, some answers. I slugged down the rest of my coffee and had to push myself up to stand. I was so tired. Carl didn't lend a hand but waited for me in the hallway, waiting for me to follow him. From behind, the door to the Society swung open so hard and fast it cracked into the wall with a thwack that made me jump and scream. It had to be the vampires, the brood. They found me. Brian! It was no vampire. It was Jean. Sweet dear Jean. I turned thinking I was hearing things, that in my sleep-weary state I was hallucinating. Jean ran to me and gave me the strongest embrace ever, hugging my bony body so tight I could barely breathe. I wasn't hallucinating. Jean was really here, in Switzerland, at the society. She grabbed my shoulders and pushed me back slightly, giving me a look, then planting a kiss on my lips. My God, Brian, what's happened to you? Are you okay? Are you hurt? You look horrible. I cracked the biggest smile I could muster, which wasn't much given the state I was in, but it was something. And then my eyes became heavy, so heavy. Blackness. No Christian, no brood, only the blackness of sleep. Brian, wake up, Jean said. I felt myself being shaken awake. Brian! Brian! My eyes opened, and behind Jean I saw him, Christian, and the brood. Yes, Brian, wake up, Christian said, startling Jean. Where is Brian? Brian is in the kitchen, the brood respond unanimously. Jean bends down and clutches me tight. I can feel her shaking. Then she drops to her knees. She's getting weaker. I can feel it in her grip. Christian, the brood, they're feeding off of her, sucking her life force, doing what they did to me, but 1,000 times worse. I told you, Christian said, looking at me with a smirk. You cannot stop us. The great dragon will come. The order of the nine will be completed. From behind the brood, another man approached, an old Middle Eastern man with a goatee, wearing a suit with a pocket watch. He looked ancient yet healthy. Mr. El-Abweeb, my greetings, Christian says, bowing his head. Would you like to get in on this? The man waves his hand and shakes his head no. I look towards Jean, who looks at me with fear and sickness in her eyes. This is why I'm here, Jean whispers to me. The society. This is where it all started. It's a front for the vampires. It's the source. It's a trap. The brood move closer to Jean, their hands out, clawing the life force from her body. Their voices become a disharmonic growl, low and guttural, primal. My Jean, she collapses on the floor. Jean, I love you, I confess as I take her hand. I always have. She doesn't respond. You bastards! Christian lets out a laugh at my outburst. You should have joined us in the great trapezoid, he says. You should have completed the order. I gather all my energy and stand to face Christian. Then take me now, I command. Take me, but leave her. I point to Jean, collapsed on the floor, weak. She has nothing to do with this. Christian looks back at Mr. El-Abweed, who nods. Very well, Christian says. You realize, however, we will destroy you. After we unleash the great dragon upon this earth, you are finished. It's a pity, too. If you hadn't run, you could have joined us. You were part of the brood. You always have been, but you just never realized it. Not until I awakened you by the Frankenstein manuscript. Christian shakes his hand my direction as if he was flinging water off of his fingers, and blackness consumes me. I'm dreaming, back in the night side, back in the darkness with the streaky neon lights and the naked brood, making a trapezoid for me to enter and join. The final coronation, the unleashing of Tiamat, the apocalypse of humanity. In the dream state, Christian strips me naked. His Zeus-like voice decrees me to join the brood, to finish the infernal geometry. I make no attempt to escape him this time. I'm not going to wake up. I will do as Christian orders, and when the deed is done, my life will be over. You promise to not go after Jean, to leave her alone? I confirm. Christian nods. I hope and pray they keep their word about Jean. I don't know that they will, but I have to have faith that my actions will not be responsible for her death as well. She had nothing to do with my stupidity. If I would have listened to her in the first place, none of this would have happened. I could have avoided Christian in Spokane and have none of this. Or maybe I couldn't have avoided Christian. Maybe my fate was sealed when I met him in Geneva, when he latched on to me and made me feel sick, when I had my first dream and went through the gate of mastery, the first step according to the 9 laws of magic book. Maybe it wouldn't have mattered if I stayed away from him in Spokane. He would have found me, taken me, made me one of his. He did it from the moment I met him. I bend and contort my body, folding it into position amongst the brood, interlocking my arms and legs into theirs, finishing the trapezoid. Christian lets out the most god-awful, ear-splitting laugh. Even in this dreamlike state, my ears hurt from the noise. From behind Christian comes the old man, Mr. Alaweeb. My eyes watch in horror as he grows, getting bigger, bigger, blowing up like a helium balloon. He's transforming. His hands and arms turn into scaly legs and hoofs. His body elongates and his head splits into many. Slowly he's changing, becoming something inhuman, becoming the grand dragon, Tiamat. Christian keeps laughing incessantly, marveling at the vampiric plague he's about to unleash. It's the sound of madness, making me cringe and snap my eyes shut. His demonic laughter rises and stops. Laughter becomes gurgling and gasping. The trapezoid tumbles into a mess of humanity amongst the blackness. As I reopen my eyes, I see Christian grabbing at his throat spilling with blood. Around me, the throats of the other brood members erupt like Christians. Fountains of blood shooting from their jugular vein, desperate gasps of air from their open windpipes. They're dying. All of them dying. And then the dragon, its heads chopped off one by one, covering the blackness with an ocean of red. My bloody naked body is being shaken awake. Brian! It's Jean. I open my eyes and the atrium of the society is just as bloody as the dream. Bodies of the brood are everywhere on the floor, all dead. Jean is standing there with a knife, and so is Carl, the man who answered the door. Both are covered in the blood of the brood. It's what I came here to tell you, Jean says. I found it, their weakness, in my research. When they're in their dream state, the night side, they're vulnerable. During the day, they're untouchable, but when they enter their dreams, that's when they can be killed. Carl nods his head. Yes, it's true. They kept me here, captive, fed off of me. But I saw how vulnerable they were when they dreamed. Except there was always one watching me, so I couldn't do a thing. But not today, not today. Jean explains, Carl helped me when they all went to go do whatever they did with you. He gave me a knife, and that's when we attacked. I stood up, bloody and weak, and I gave Jean the tightest hug I ever have before, the one that says I love you and I'm sorry and thank you all in one. Is that all of them? Jean asked. Yes, I said and gave her a kiss on the cheek. That was all of the brood. I look at Carl for confirmation. He twists the hair on top of his head, looking down, not at me. And then I see it behind him, the plaque that says the society was founded in 1816, born of the Fraternal UK Order. Oh my God, there's more.